we were just talking right before we hit record about how, we struggle over, how to educate our kids. And we're like, hey, let's just make that the episode. So this is episode about kids in school and co-parenting and how do you get onto the same page with your co-parent on how to make sure that your kids aren't dumb.
Yes. Dumb. That's not what I would say. I would say like just doing the fucking work. How do you make sure that they're doing that? I have a little bit to say about that.
I'm Lily, single mom to teen twins.
Mother! I'm recording in here.
And I'm Scott, single dad to a preteen boy. Dad! It's under the sink!
We're two old friends trying to navigate single parenting.
And spending the whole time thinking, I hope I don't fuck this up. All right, so we're going to talk about, educating our kids and the frustration we feel when they're outside of our purview. But first, we want to talk a little about the news because a story popped up, recently that I found fascinating, and I was like, I wonder what Lily thinks about this. It's about Jason Kelce.
Is Taylor Swift's boyfriend-in-law. What brother? Okay, yeah.
So, his wife just started a podcast, his wife, Kylie. I think it's successful enough, so I'm not going to say the name
they
of the
don't need
podcast
us promoting them.
it. And,
yeah.
We want you to listen to us. They do not need us. But they've got 3 kids and she's pregnant with the 4th one and she just started this podcast. And one of the questions asked is, where are your kids while you're doing this podcast? And she says, well, they're home with childcare. I got childcare for them. I always get childcare for them when they leave the house. And the co-host was like, well, even when your husband is home, he's like, even when he's home, it doesn't matter. I always get childcare for them. And then she, quickly tried to caveat it. He's busy. He's that. But then she followed up and was like, but I don't, he does not look after the kids, essentially. She makes sure that the kids are looked after. And if she's not there for whatever reason, he is not in charge of the kids. The childcare that she hired is in charge of the kids. And I thought, for one thing, this is a firestorm. I don't think
maybe she knows exactly what she's doing.
But there's been a firestorm, a lot of funny kind of tweets about it. There's one tweet, I just want to read this because they're funny. I got all these from Huffington Post, so, blame them. But like, straight women are not okay. I can't imagine being married to someone I don't trust with my kids. That's insane. And someone else said the fact that Jason has never had to worry about being responsible for his children is mind-boggling to me. And my favorite is, I would be genuinely embarrassed to admit this. It sounds like Kylie also has a 37-year-old son at home. These are the kinds of things people are saying. And yet you hear the other side. Jason's busy. Jason's a millionaire. He brings in all of this money.
Oh, that's the only difference. I think immediately my thought was I can't believe that one man can't take care of his 3 children. At the same time, I think obviously if I had money and I could pay somebody else to be there, pick up all the toys and to make sure the snacks are put away. And he can be there and be fun play dad because he's, my multimillionaire making husband, then money solves a lot of these problems.
But then she said, if that means that he's at the house and someone else is there and that's what we have going on, he will not be watching the kids. So essentially the person in charge and responsible when she's not home is not him. So it's the childcare person. He bears no responsibility for the children at all. And to me, sure, you can buy your way. It seems like any rich family with a nanny or whatever, but it still feels, because then I'm like, well, why would she bring this up? Why is she talking about it?
I think we know why she's talking about it because we're talking about it right now. But I think it is it's a good move. It's it's rage bait, which solid move. But also I guess the opposite side is, I don't know how young their kids are. 3 kids is a lot of fucking kids. If it's about to be a 4th, that's a lot. It sounds like, my guess is that they're fairly young.
They're very young.
And her husband, especially during football season, is traveling every other week at a minimum and training and at camp. I don't know how, when he, in his off season, does he spend time with the kids? How do the kids feel with them? Do they listen to him? There's all kinds of, in non-rich families, this happens all of the time where the kids don't listen to the dad. So the mom has to be there and, or the dad just doesn't feel like it, or he doesn't think that it needs as much direct oversight as the mom thing. So like she's just found a solution.
My counter to that is that sometimes I think there's a certain sense of just pride in being the ones the kids rely on. It's a dynamic where you can inadvertently almost infantilize your husband in this scenario.
No way.
I don't because has she put him in a position to be in charge of the kids and what has happened?
I'm sure she has. And that is why she's hired someone.
But I am not sure she has. Maybe she hasn't. Like maybe if she were to put him in charge of the kids,
possible.
it'd be okay.
It's possible. I used to, in my several jobs ago, used to travel for work regularly. So like every 6 weeks or so, I'd be gone for nearly a work week. And my kids were much younger then. And that was kind of my experience in this. Like, even though I was the full-time breadwinner at the time, and he was home with the kids during the day, like I would come home at night and I would still make dinner and make things clean and make sure everybody was doing homework and that sort of thing. And it wasn't because I enjoyed being the responsible one. It was more like the things need to get done. So I got them done. And so when I was out of town, I would dread coming back to the house that I'd had to come back to. Because like he was good at keeping them alive, good at taking them to school, good at, like they ate whatever they ate, which is fine because at the end of the day, it's all that matters is that they've eaten. But it would be like the biggest disaster. So like, yes, you were responsible and you did all the things. You just didn't do them like well.
So this is a constant problem. And this is something that actually it's its own episode, but it's the idea of surrogate parenting. The idea that it isn't about whether or not you can both parent. It's, are you parenting the same way? Ultimately, maybe it was rage bait what she was saying, but it's still a pretty strong statement to essentially say my husband can't handle kids.
Has he had any response?
He has been shushed up about this, but like that's a pretty strong statement. And so all I could think of is the rage bait bit, but then there's also probably a little bit of her that maybe resents it and brings it up to throw a little shade.
I think if you're a football wife, you don't throw any kind of shade because you want to protect your situation.
The way I think about it is like raising your kids is a job. You each have your jobs. And so what I've always hated is this idea that, well, my job makes more money than your job. And so you have to have two jobs. That's what happened with my mom, where it was like she was a full-time mom, but my dad wanted money brought into the house. And so she had to go out and get a job. So she did all the momming and she had a job. And so it's like my dad made more money. And so he got one job. And my mom didn't make as much money because she was administrative assistant to doctors.
I'd say all moms have two jobs, like regardless of I made more money in my situation and I was doing that too. And I think that is like the dynamic that many of us, I'm not going to say all of us, fall into typically, like gender dynamics, etc. That we're still having this debate in every parenting article I read about the labor divide, the mental load, like all of that stuff. It's even in relationships where, like with the best of intentions, it's a 50-50 parenting household, chore division, like everything is written out and clearly 50-50. The unspoken truth, even in those, is like, probably it's the moms who are pulling more weight.
The thing is, it's funny because I would say that's probably true 90% of the time. But what's interesting is when it does flip.
No, hold on.
Oh, God. Lily has such thoughts on this. You just see, like, she's literally right. If you can't see her, she's stretching her arm as if she's about to go into like a boxing match. Like she is so ready.
What I was going to say is when it's flipped, the kind of a praise that men get for doing work that women do on the regular is obscene.
We're often stuck in our little gender corner and we see it from our gender point of view. And women see a guy doing that and they're just so gratified that somebody understands the work that they do and is like experiencing it.
Well, what do you hear? Because like you are a full-time single dad. Like I'm sure you get all kinds of pats on the back for what a good job you're doing as a single dad.
I don't know. I get a weird kind of mix because I do get pats on the back, but I also get I get a lot of advice. There's a lot of people that just automatically assume that
Right, that you don't know what you're doing because you're a dad. Yeah.
that I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm constantly getting advice. Even when I don't ask for it, I'm always getting like, oh, you should do this or we do this. And I'm like, I've been a full-time single dad now for 6 years, like more than half my son's life. Like, am I great at everything? No. But am I the worst cook in the world? Probably. But like, I'm still like, I know enough to ask for help when I need it. I don't always need it foisted on me. But what I have noticed though, is that the communication lines that around your kids in school, they're run through just female circles. It's mothers groups. It's like, and it's a lot. I'm not saying it's impossible for me because I've been able to do it, but it's not as easy for me to tap into those networks. It's a little bit harder for me to tap in because nobody expects me to be the one to handle any of that stuff. And the way that everyone talks to each other is not a way I talk to people. I am not a communicator in the same way as a guy. So I have to learn a new language.
You're doing great.
I know. Thank you, Lily. Lily is always trying to give me a pat on the back. So that transitions perfectly into education, I think, which the idea of who's in charge, surrogate parenting, which I mean, it's a phrase I use, but it's something that comes up a lot, I know, in my relationship.
No. What do you mean? Like when it's your own kid?
Surrogate parenting is trying to get the other parent to parent the way you would parent. So I think it happens a lot in our situation. It's a little bit about what you were talking about earlier about, I come home and things aren't done the way I would want them done.
No, it's not the way I want them to be done. Just done.
But you know what? That is the argument that my ex makes all the time. It's not her opinion. It's just fact. This is the way things are supposed to be done.
When we're talking about something like loading a dishwasher, is it like you put the plates in this place and the spoons in this place? Like if we're going to pull out the manual, there is a correct way to do it. But what I'm talking about is, are there dishes in the dishwasher? Period.
You're dealing with a much different level. Well, let me explain to you what I'm thinking about. So my son is learning the cello and, he's in the orchestra at school. He played it last year and then he liked it enough that we're doing it again this year. He's doing chamber as well as main orchestra. So he's really getting into it. He plays 4 times a week at school. And so my ex and I have been talking about his practice schedule at home. And she wants him to practice about 3 times a week when she's not at school. I originally agreed to that. And then once life started, realized that he has so many things. He has to do an hour of homework a night. He's 11.
Yep.
All this stuff. It was too much. And so I pulled back and said, you can do it once or twice a week. And it turned into about once a week. And in my mind, practicing home once a week and then practicing 4 times at school, one of which is individual instruction at his age, which is 11, at an instrument he's just starting. To me, that's plenty. And we got into this big argument over whether or not, I wanted him to be good at cello. And this is what you have to be good at cello. This is a fact, not her opinion, but a fact. This is what you need to be good at cello. You need to practice this much. And then
she might not be wrong, but I think there's a more fundamental question is like, are you trying to produce a professional cellist?
Well, and he did the concert. I thought he did great at the concert. Was he perfect at the concert? Of course not. He's an 11-year-old.
No.
If you want...
it sounds terrible to go to an 11-year-old string concert.
7th level of hell, right with the bad popes.
Oh my God.
It's bad popes and elementary school orchestra concerts all in the same place.
Absolutely.
It was... when the violins came in and it just sounded like there was like one of those Japanese water ghosts behind me about to kill me. Yeah. It was horrible.
I mean, everybody's got to start somewhere,
know,
but
do we have to witness it? Why are we there?
Yeah.
But he did a pretty good job. And they have like the chamber, which only did one song, which is like about half the orchestra played it. Sounded great. It's him and another cellist. We get to the end and my ex tells me, pointing out, saying, do you see how much better the other cellist is? You see how much better his hand thing is? I know his mom and he practices as much as, our son should be practicing, and that's why he's so much better. And she kept saying it. I'm like, our son's doing fine. It's like, yeah, but he could be doing better. He could be doing as good as the other cellist.
Well, I think your situation sounds complicated because it's like, as we talked about before, like I personally find the suburbs as the seventh level of hell, maybe eighth or ninth. But I think there's probably a lot of competition, like in built-in competition there that she's like, sounds like she's partaking in, or maybe not. I mean, maybe everybody just wants their kid to be the best cellist and whatever. You're right. Like this comes down to parental philosophy, and I never know that I've had one until after the fact. But mine has always been like, you expose kids to everything. Like you give them opportunities to like partake and try things, and then you don't force it after that. Like they try it, and if they're into it and they want to do it, like that is the only way that you can get a kid to do something that they'll sustain. So like, I feel like the mistake that she's not wrong, that professional kids who are playing music
100%.
like start young and are practicing every day, but like, are you making a happy kid?
I guess from my point of view is I didn't want to sacrifice other things, and other things is his schooling. I mean, he does an hour of homework a night. It's this kind of
playing.
Playing I think is important. And I think just that sense of like not overwhelming him. And then, there's the flip side of it, which is, he's not going to do it himself. And I forgot.
Do you know my solution to any time that it's something like this is like, write the shit down. Like
we have a calendar. We have a calendar. That doesn't mean I can't forget. I'm capable of forgetting things in any scenario.
It's not for you. The calendar's not for you. The calendar is for your son.
Yeah.
So like, he's checking and doing it. And if he doesn't do it, like, I am also a fan of like natural consequences.
Oh, that is a very interesting thought. This is why I talked to Lily, because Lily has all the. It's funny. This is the great irony of this podcast. I go into this podcast saying I want to solve all your problems. Lily comes in saying I just want to share. I end up sharing all the time, and Lily ends up solving all my problems. How did that happen?
Welcome.
How did that happen? But that is such an interesting idea. The idea of, I put a calendar up. We have a calendar up on the fridge.
Everybody's agreed to what the deal is.
I have one. He's never looked at it once because there are no consequences for him looking at it. But the idea of, this is your thing, you need to check off as you go. And if you don't check it off, there's a consequence. That is where I don't, all I have to do is look at the end of the night and see how many check marks there are.
Yeah.
That's not I can get behind that. I don't mind that at all.
You give him the responsibility, It's like A, empowering him, and B, if he doesn't do it, like say he doesn't practice and he messes up in a concert, I'm sure he'll be disappointed in himself.
What I like about that too, though, is that this was very top down. We are like, you need to practice 3 times a week. Yep. What I have noticed when he practices is that he doesn't always get better when he practices. Sometimes he just makes the same mistakes over and over again. He is the most stubborn kid. I'm learning that all kids are stubborn, but he is so freaking stubborn. And when I try to correct him, he gets mad and he won't listen and this and that.
That was me as a child.
Yeah. And that's why, so I've honestly pulled back. That's the other reason why I don't push him to practice as many times a week, because I think he gets more out of practicing at school where there's somebody to correct him he'll listen to.
Totally.
Than he does at home, where I'm like, I know what he's doing wrong and I can point it out to him. I can point out where he's not crescendoing correctly, or if he's not, messing up a meter pattern or something. And I can point all that out to him, and he's just like, Dad, leave me alone. Like, he just doesn't want to hear it from me.
My kids played instruments all throughout elementary school. That, you start on the devil's whistle, the recorder.
It is the devil. Why do they do that? Why do they start on the recorder? It's so evil.
Don't know. And then they moved to violin, which also
the worst.
Because I've been to that. And then my daughter, when they got to be good enough to be in orchestra, my daughter picked saxophone. And my son got, too, though. I know. My son got clarinet. It's fine. We made it through. But so they played music all through elementary school, and then kind of COVID happened during their middle school. But he was in a music program, and she was like, I'm done. I'm tapped out. I'm like not interested in pursuing it. And he picked up and taught himself ukulele and then guitar and then everything on his own.
Yep.
And like, there could have been nothing in the world that I did
It's
If
him.
I said, why don't you practice? Totally. It has to be something that they want to do to get better at. And I have, as opposed to the kind of child I was, which was like your son, irate if somebody tried to correct me. Mine are super coachable children. And this is very strange to me.
But that makes sense.
I mean, just naturally.
But I like, I was in the same thing. Like my mom was a piano teacher and she tried to teach me piano and I refused. And there's like, I would not learn piano. I tried guitar. I hated it, when I was in elementary school and I picked it up freshman year on my own, taught myself, myself piano. I played trombone. That was the one thing that, cause you had to play something in school, which is the instrument I don't play anymore. But I had a goal. Like I had a goal of being better and of picking up chicks. Like that was my goal. And
with the trombone,
the trombone wasn't doing it. I moved to guitar because, you could be suggestive with a trombone, but no ladies like it. But plus, you realize that the trombone, there's a spit valve. So every time you play, just saliva.
Ugh.
Everyone can watch just all the saliva from your mouth pouring out of your. There's nothing sexy about the trombone when you're in middle school.
I know.
Sorry.
But I will say there is a downside to my tactics. Since my kids are in high school now, like I really pulled back from being involved with their teachers and stuff because I think that they should learn. Like I know we came from Gen X. My parents didn't know anything about my grades other than like when I brought a report card home and they're like, honor roll, great, good job. That was the only involvement. Like I had to get my mom's signature, and eventually I got so good at faking her signature that I didn't even bother. My one child takes all the responsibility, knows everything to be done. Grades are good, on top of it all of the time, and that's great. That's what I hoped would happen. Like I actually think that in empowering your children to be in charge of themselves, you teach them a better lesson, except for when they don't do things that they should be doing. We get a big angry letter from one of the high schools that said, your child is in danger of failing English and this will, compromise their graduation. And because I don't check in, I definitely am not the parent. Like, I think it is so creepy that parents now can log into these school accounts and check on their kids' grades every single day, and that I have refused. Like, I won't sign up. I will not do this. Like, this is not for me.
You mean what I think of as the greatest invention known to man is that I can now micromanage my son's education?
Yes. So I've never done it. I will not do it. And I've entrusted that, like, I say like, oh, do you have work to do? Is there anything, checking in? And I often get a response like, no, it's fine. Like, okay. So one of them is experiencing some natural consequences right now. But I've thought like, well, maybe I should have pushed more or asked more. Yeah. But like I do, like I think there is no better lesson than like, oh, shit, I fucked up and now I have to fix this or else the consequences are extreme.
This is the constant battle that I have, like with my son's education. It's like, I have high expectations.
Same.
Because I know what he's capable of. And I know that his biggest problem, he's got two problems. One is motivation. Every kid's problem is motivation.
He's 11. Yes, go on.
Exactly. But his other problem is he doesn't like asking for help from anybody. So he will.
I feel like he's my natural son.
I know, it does sound like
everything about him.
But
it's like exactly
but he
like
leans
me.
into his he is so confident in his wrong answer that he doesn't want to listen to how to get the right answer. He'd much more be just very proud of his wrong answer. And then to the point where he's had crying fits about it. He literally does not want to be pushed on this stuff.
Yes.
Part of that, I'm sure, is because of my own expectations. Like, he can.
And some of that might just be personality.
Yeah,
like
and that's. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't want to just. Where is that level? We're going to talk to someone who's all about free range kids, and I'm like, where is that level of free range when it comes to education? And
yeah, and I've been very free range because I do think that it is the only way to create independent people. It's like make them responsible for themselves Now with this safety net, like, and at high school, I think is probably the right age. I think 11, like you're going to need a lot more support still.
No.
And I do not expect any 11-year-old to be motivated to play anything other than like Minecraft.
Roblox. Don't forget Roblox.
Yeah. The way that you can make good adults, I think, is to not do all of this stuff for them. But then we get into like the situation where like, okay, what do we do when my hands-offness now, like I did yell about it, but I was like, dude, you have got to fix this. What I had to like get his dad and be like, what are we doing to fix this? Because it can't just be a me effort.
My question has always been, I work with a lot of self-motivated people. I've, honestly, magazine industry, especially littered with self-motivated, but not self-motivated is the wrong word. I feel like I worked with a lot of women in magazines that have somebody's voice in their head and they are constantly hearing that voice. And I have never been around harder workers than like I worked at Cosmopolitan, and the women at Cosmopolitan, it is nothing more interesting than watching the best educated, smartest women killing themselves over sex articles and like top 3 things to name his dong. And yet knowing this is like a Yale education. And like super motivated, like incredibly like going over this 30 times to make this dong article perfect. And just realizing like, this is what these are the people that should be solving the world's problems. And instead they are writing dong articles. And that's a very sad thing. But as I watch that happen, I'm like, there's a voice in their head that makes them that productive and that makes them that good at even this job. Like they're good at, they're just so good at their jobs because of that voice. Yeah. And I always ask myself, where does that voice come from? On the other side, does it make you happy to have that voice in your head? Probably not. Like it's probably exhausting.
And I was one of those kids too, but and much like my daughter, like this was just like, it wasn't any parental voice. Like there was expectations of me, but just because like, that's what you do. Like you do school, you do well. And I had an older brother and sister who, one of whom didn't do great in school, but not for lack of trying. And one of whom could do well, but didn't try. Yeah. So like they were not ideal students. I was like completely self-motivated. I totally enjoyed everything. I wanted the best grade in class. I hated that like somebody else, 6 people graduated higher than I did in our graduating class. And like, whatever, are they smarter or not? I still have debates about that to this day. However, that was completely self-driven. Yeah. Like I didn't have, like, I mean, I did have, my father would say when I would be proud of a test grade and it was like a 98, he'd be like, where are the other 2 points? So like there probably is some motivation there.
Yeah, I may have said that once.
Never say that to your son again. If we get one thing out of this podcast, like do not do that to him. But the thing that if you don't have that voice, I don't think it's good to have I don't know.
You can replace it. You don't think if the voice isn't internally generated, it can't really be replaced by someone else's voice.
I don't think it's healthy to. Yeah. Like, I know those same kind of women that you're talking about. I literally was having a conversation because, media industry is imploding. Everybody's laying off everybody all the time. Mm-hmm. One of my former colleagues just got laid off after 2 months on a job at a magazine. And she was like, I can't believe I've wasted so much of my life about this trivial bullshit. And so if you've got this like highly educated, super motivated, task-driven person who in their 40s is like, what did I just do? I don't think that's great either.
Yeah.
What did I just do with my life?
Well, I mean, I do wonder if like because what we're talking about is like, how do you build a work ethic in your child? Where does it come from? And does it come from them? Does it come from you? A mix? Like, where does work ethic come from? Because that's really what we're talking about. And the problem is I don't know that answer very well. And so like, I'm trying to instill it and not sure if I'm doing a good job of it or not. And then you run into the other half of the conversation that you almost got into, which is when you're split, you now have 2 different opinions on how a work ethic should go. And you have your own focused time for your method versus when you're married and you can, kind of have to mesh it or one person takes the lead. Now I'm handing over my idea of work ethic to you. Do you have the same idea as me? And what happens when you don't?
We always parented differently, even when we were together. Like probably on the bigger things, we agreed, but there was definitely like the give and take of like when when they were little, I was very rigid about like school week schedule. So like home by 4:00 from the playground, like get all your playing out after school between 4:00 and 6:00. Like that's homework time. If you don't get the homework done in that time, like that's it. We're not doing it anymore. Like if any elementary school kid needs more than 2 hours of homework, like then that's a problem with me and the teacher and not a problem with the kid. I mean, honestly, they had so much homework.
2 hours on a school day for elementary school?
It was insane. So I wanted to put a firm boundary on it. And then like 6 to whatever, 8 is like dinner and family time. And you can watch an episode of something if you wanted to after dinner and then bed. Like, so I was really strict about that. And he was not. So like that was my taskmaster. Like I said, he was good at coaching. So like if they were out playing sports or doing other things, like he would take them around on adventures and like gave them a nice, like gave them an life experience that I wouldn't have given them. So it was like a nice like yin and yang that we had about raising these kids together. But now we have either just yin, 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 and then yes. And that's the hard thing. Like, because when you do need to come together on like a big deal, like I found that letter from the school, a huge fucking deal.
Yeah.
And like, you need to be unified. And we had a communication together. And then I pulled him aside afterwards. And I was like, did you talk to him? Did you talk to him? Like, what did you say? Because like, I told him, I was like, listen, not mad at you, but when he's at your house, he does this. When, when he's like, he knows how to
work it.
Work the system.
Yep.
Work the system. And I was like, we just have to be on the same page. We just have to get him to the finish line.
What do you do though? What do you do when it's not matched up? Like, what do you do when it gets off the rails? Like you just quietly seethe? Like, how do you approach your co-parent when you feel like that it is gone off the rails a little bit? Like, how do you start that conversation without it being combative?
Well, this is the first time that I ever said to him, I'm not mad at you. I thought that was super helpful. Like, listen, this is not me being heated at you. Yeah. This is me being annoyed at the situation and like heated about the situation. But like, we are having this quiet discussion in the bathroom.
Furious whispering in the bathroom.
Totally. Because, we live in an apartment.
Yep. I know.
There's
so
no
much
secrets.
harder. I have in a small house, but I can at least go. There's a corner of the house where you can have this conversation.
I went into the bathroom. I turned on my hairdryer. So that
oh God. What are you in the Americans or something?
I think like trying, and that was, it's been years. And like I said, we've been separated for years. And that was the first time it occurred to me to say to him, I'm not mad at you about this. Because I thought like, I just don't want it to be a battle between us.
Yeah.
I want us to feel unified. And like, that was the only thing I could think of in that moment to like, because I know I can come off intensely and I know I can be intimidating. And I know like when somebody comes at you like that, like your automatic the reaction is to be defensive. So it literally took 5 seconds when it occurred to me how I was being. And I was like, oh, maybe he'll think that I'm yelling at him about this. When it's not his fault either. But like, I just wanted to make sure that we got the same communication across, which was, you fucking asshole.
What happens when he has that issue with you? Like, because you have the kids during the week, you have more control over that stuff than he does. So like, if he has a question, how does he approach it with you?
He's not a great communicator, which is always been one of our issues. I mean, he did tell me recently that he thought I was overreacting to something, which did not go well. But I don't know. Like, I think even in our marriage, it was like, there's a lot of me being like, do you really need to be so uptight about this? To myself, like me saying that to myself and letting go a lot. Because I think if it was just me all of the time, I would be super uptight about a lot of things. And it's been for the best that I've learned to not be. So for him, it's more stuff like, why don't you just let this go?
But that is a thing. Like, that's the same as you saying to him, pay more attention. Him saying, let something go. It's the same impulse. Yeah. It's just a different request. So he just says it to you. He's just like, I think you should let this go. And then you like take that in and You're not just like, you're not, like, it doesn't turn into an argument.
That is more of a voice in my head, talking about like little voices in your head. Like that's more a voice of in my head right now of my own. Like,
okay,
is this worth the kind of upset that you've got right now? Like, or does it really matter?
So
does it really matter?
So did you replace him in life and just put his voice into your head?
I mean, because we kind of grew up together, like we were together from the time I was 19.
Yeah.
So like maybe I'm a voice in his head too, because of,
I have her voice in my head occasionally. And the voice is always, it's almost like you hear it so much in your marriage that once it's gone, the echoes of it continue. Like they don't go away.
Totally.
And it's like, you say something or you think something, and then it's not a flinch per se, but sometimes it is, but you just wait for the silence to be filled with that opinion that you've been hearing for 13 years, 20 years, whatever it is. But what's kind of almost nice about that is that you get that because you've taken that with you. You don't need him to say it anymore because you say it to yourself. And so you get rid of the negative side of it, which was the actual argument about it or whatever. Yeah. And you just have the argument in your head. And so you can kind of get the positive out of it. It's like you've strained the poison out of, and you're just getting the juice. The
thing that actually makes me try to like back off a little bit about like how controlling I am, controlling, but like just, I'm always in charge of everything. Like, it's just my nature.
Oh, really? I have not noticed.
Sorry. But the personality traits of his that are wonderful that I see in them are reasons that make me remember like, oh, this is not a battle. Like we've created this cool thing together, and like they wouldn't be who they are without him.
And also knowing like we're so worried about the futures of our kids, like and I think we're probably I was brought up a little different than you. My dad was very concerned about my grades and paid a lot of attention and stuff like that. But it didn't make me like some crazy hard worker. I have nothing on the women of Cosmo. Like it didn't like turn that into anything, but at least it just made it important enough that, I just valued it, I guess. But, the sense of if my dad and my mom were to look ahead when I was my son's age and try to plot out a life for me, they would never have come anywhere close to the life I have. And of course, not even close. And yet very proud of the life I have. I'm proud of the life I have. Like, it worked out well, even though they could not have micromanaged me there. And so it's like looking at my son and be like, am I going to force him to play cello so he'll thank me later when he's in the Philharmonic? Am I going to force him to do 2 hours of homework a night, even though he's passing out halfway through?
I will say, whatever it is, don't be like my dad and remind me to this day, like, I really still wish you were a doctor.
The idea of what is a foundation and what is micromanagement. And you got to figure out what that is. And that's the hardest thing because my idea of that is different than my ex's idea of that.
Yeah. And we're all tainted by our own experiences too. Like I am not, and I probably should be more of a micromanager in anything I do in my work life, in my family life, except for the dishwasher. And like, I'm not a micromanager, not at all. But I think that comes from me always knowing what I'm doing. Like I'm always in charge of myself and I expect other people to have that sort of control over themselves. And like, when you're talking about your kids, like you can't expect that of kids. So like somebody's got to like put in the guardrails or the barriers or the instruction, and when you are doing that, when they're young, it's in an effort to like produce a person who can do this, who can replicate it for themselves when they're older. And what it feels like, again, I never think I have a philosophy, but clearly like I do. Know. Like that's how I felt about it. And so when he didn't do the same thing where I thought like, oh, I'm doing all this stuff to like make a good future adult. And like, when you don't do that, like that means you're going to ruin their whole lives. Like, it's not that serious.
It's not, we have to recognize that we are not the only influence on our kids. And oftentimes the biggest influence is in us. Like I am the way I am as much because of the 3 bullies in 3rd grade as I am for anything that my parents did. So there's so many influences, positive and negative, that we're kind of overstating our own impact on our kids' lives when we do all of that. What's funny though, when we come into this argument, you know, my ex and I often cannot come to an agreement on this, on some of these things. Like we just butt heads, we just disagree. And and so what we've decided to do, which she chafes at, but we do, is a third party expert on things.
Good idea.
So if there is something,
a neutral party is a great idea.
So we have a third party expert, whether it's my son's therapist, whether it's his doctor, whether it's his teacher, you know, his cello teacher, you know, whatever it is. Like, let's bring in a third opinion, and let's let that opinion be our tiebreaker. And I mean, I feel like it's fairly effective, even though, you know, it's run against me a couple of times.
You don't always get to win, Scott.
I know that. It's probably not the best way to do things, and it's just the way we're doing things.
Yeah.
I would love to.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
If people have other ways in which they mediate this kind of stuff, and I know we started talking about education, but now we're talking about everything. But you know, I would love to hear what other people do, because, you know, we came to most of this ourselves, and like, it's not like we had like 8 methods in front of us and we just cherry picked.
Scott has so much more expertise on his side, like therapists and counselors and stuff, and I'm just like winging it and hoping everything turns out okay.
Well, you know, I don't know. You have cool kids, but you have cool kids. That's a win right there. I wish I was cool when I was their age.
He's way cooler than I ever was. So there's that. Be. And my daughter gives way less of a shit about everybody else, her age peer group, than I ever did. So like, also a win. She doesn't do social media. And I feel like that is the biggest win of all.
That is so good. Good for her.
She's like, it's stupid, I'm not going to do it, which is great. But that again is like, okay, that's the combination of parenting. Like we wouldn't have ended up with these kids without, like, and again, like going back to like what you liked about each other. Like there was something that attracted you to each other, and like wanting to have create a family together is like, you want a little bits of each of that person in the people that you create in the world. And, you know, if you can just like see that, it's cool.
Yep.
It's, you know,
I am all for that. Make that happen. But if you get an A every once in a while, I ain't going to be mad at it.
Seriously, he's failing his manga class and he loves it. And it's just because he hasn't showed up to do the work. He says it's that I don't understand. Just because the subject matter is enjoyable doesn't mean it's easy, which
that is 100% true. The classes in college that I enjoyed the most, I got the worst grades in.
That's so messed up.
No, it makes sense, because honestly, this is our education system, I think, is entirely messed up. Our education system is all about creating a resume. It's not about becoming a more well-rounded person. It's all resume building. And when I got to college, I was like, you know what I'm going to learn most at? It's not in class. It's in building teams. It's in running clubs.
Yeah.
Like that's what life is about. Not just the knowledge you have. It's how do you manage people? How do you work in a group? How do you lead people? And so that's what I focused on. And then I took oceanography and I got a C, and I loved it. It was the best course, but I challenged myself because I don't know anything about oceanography. And so I'm not going to get an A, because it's not like I took Shakespeare. I got an A in Shakespeare. I know everything about Shakespeare. I've been studying it since I was little. I don't crap about the ocean. So I'm starting from nothing, but I learned so much, and you should be allowed to do that. Like you should be allowed to take a class and get a C in it and walk away, and it should not mess up your resume.
I would kill for a C for him.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I went to Germany for 1 semester, and I was studied abroad in Germany, and it tanked my GPA. It tanked it, because I barely speak German. The only reason they let me go was because they needed a certain number of people for the program. So suddenly my C became a B minus, magically became a B minus. I got there. I barely spoke the language. I got B minuses and C pluses in all my classes because I didn't know what anyone was saying. I had, it was a hard experience. I won't say it was easy, but it was formative. And I walk away a completely different person because I had it. And but because of it, I ended up with a GPA right smack in the middle of my graduating class. Whereas my friends that never did anything like that and just stuck to their majors, they ended up with A's and they ended up with these great GPAs. And yet I feel like had nowhere near the life experience that I had.
Fair. And has anybody ever asked them since they graduated from college what their GPA is?
Nobody
cares. That is the thing.
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares. All of the times that somebody has put their GPA or tried to foist their incredible education on their application to a job, I actually think actually I'm going to give somebody else a chance who didn't get to go to Yale.
Well, I will say you are not the norm.
I'm not typical. So no, I am. I think I'm a contrarian.
A good school can help it as it gets more competitive, as more people are out there. There is that, line, and they just wipe away everyone below their line. A lot of people. And if you can somehow get above that line, you don't need the best GPA. You don't need to be at the top. You just need to be above the line. So what does above the line mean? It can be a certain kind of school. It could be a certain kind of life experience. It could be a certain kind of internship, whatever it is. You got to be, instead of thinking I need to be way up here, it's how do I make sure that when they, do their sorting, I'm on the right side.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean nothing.
And I think, so I paid for my way through both of my colleges, but I went to a private undergrad and then I went to an Ivy for my postgrad, and it doesn't make a fucking difference. So screw all these people.
Well, that's frustrating.
And, it's not frustrating because I thought it should make a difference. What I mean by that is I didn't learn anything better or different at Columbia than I learned other places. I think that I could have gone to community college and taken the same bio, the same chem, the same calculus, all of that, and learned exactly the same way at a hell of a lot less money. And it's, elitist bullshit. But to take us back, to topic,
you're trying to take us
about
back.
Education. Yeah. I know, it is an interesting thing to think about because, not only will you have to say art for your son, are you passing that bar that you were just talking about for your cello practice or for whatever, are you making sure your parent is with you on what you want for your kid?
Yes, that's
hard.
True.
Because at this point, my main goal, and maybe this is not the greatest goal, but I think it's the sanest one, is I want my kids to be happy and to be able to support themselves. That is it. That is it. The kind of pressure that, our parents might have put on us, the fact that my dad still won't drop the fact that I didn't become a doctor. I never want, I want them to be happy and enjoying their lives and be able to pay their rent. It's pretty simple. I think that we're both on that same page. My ex and I.
Oh, you and your ex, yeah. I don't you and me are arguing about it all the time.
No, my ex and I, yeah. No, we want my son if we want to do everything to help him become a rock star, if that's what he wants to be, and we want my daughter to be a famous novelist, if that's what she wants to do. But if she doesn't, or if he doesn't, and they can make a living happily, that's it.
My twist on that, I guess, is that I want my son to know enough to be able to pivot. I feel that I have done 3 jobs in my life. Two of the 3 jobs did not exist when I graduated.
Totally.
You're going out into a world, doctors, sure, there'll always be doctors and lawyers and things like that. But if you are not one of those things, then you're probably going out into a world to do a job that does not exist right now. So that's why when everyone argues with me about, liberal arts educations and people it's, what about trade schools? What about this and that? And I'm well, liberal arts education teaches you how to do a job that doesn't exist. And that is, I think, incredibly valuable.
It's a good point.
It's a valuable thing.
I did have a liberal arts education myself.
Yeah. And you're doing something that...
My degree in philosophy did not prepare me for a life in digital media, but it
did. To me, it's you go to college and you're not going to college just to do your degree. You're doing your college to learn how to ask questions. You're going to college, hopefully, to learn how to manage. I learned how to manage people in college. That's why I was able to, when I graduated, I was able to rise in my job fairly quickly because I had already started an a cappella group. It sounds stupid, but I started an a cappella group and learned how to run it, learned how to market it, and did all that at school. And school enabled me to do that. And so when I'm looking at my son and what I would...
Wait,
What?
Where I just really want to see the acapella outfits that you made your group wear.
You want to know the name of the acapella group?
Kind of.
It's bad. It was the Defenestratones. The sound of something being thrown out a window. That was the name of my acapella group.
I'm very clever.
The point, I think, I want my son to be comfortable enough with the unknown. And that is what I think a good education can hopefully do, is make you comfortable with the unknown. And so that doesn't necessarily mean the best school in the world or this and that.
No, but like, good question though. Like, do you know that is the same thing that his mom wants?
No, and I know it's not. And so,
have you ever talked about that?
No, not really. I think that's a great point, is to have that conversation. I don't think she would disagree with me on it. I think we would probably disagree on, because she does jobs that didn't really exist either. Being able to agree on philosophy so that when you go to the particulars of how to get there, you're coming from the same place. That is great. Totally. That makes a lot of sense.
I do that with work all the time. I ask, like, what's our goal all of the time, like, of, like, super senior people, so that I can know what we're working toward. Yeah. And I when I answer the question, like, I have not had that conversation with my ex. I kind of feel like we're both on the same page, and like, because we don't argue about it too much. I haven't had it, but like, as we were talking about it, it occurred to me, like, that is exactly the same thing. Like, what are we working towards here? Yeah. Like, what is it that we're trying to accomplish? Maybe she wants him to be a professional cellist. If he wants that, like, maybe she's right in, like, wanting to push him 3 times a week if he wants it too. But if what you're both working towards is like a different goal where he can pivot and be a, this Renaissance man, then maybe that's a good way to, like, tackle the parts you're disagreeing about.
No, that's a good point. But it just comes to me, it comes back to, like, that self-motivation. Part of being able to react to the world is being motivated to do so. And I find it difficult to push people to do things they're not motivated to do, because that's not going to make them any more likely to do it in the future. They're just going to be happy they don't have to do it anymore when you stop. And instead, what we're thinking in our heads is, I wish somebody had made me great at the cello so that I could be great at it now. And without thinking, the reason why I'd be great at cello right now is because I really fucking wanted to do it when I was young. Yeah. You don't become great at something because you're forced to do it. You become great because you want to do something, and hopefully that dovetails, maybe with a tiger mom wanting you to do it. Maybe that's why they're the best, but you want to do it. You don't do something like that if you don't want to do it.
I mean, it's kind of why I don't feel terrible about I do feel I'm angry about my kid failing English, but like, because, he has his own, he works hard at his music, really, really hard at his music. I am very proud. My takeaway, I had to have a takeaway. Yeah. My takeaway. Okay, please. My takeaway is, you just gotta know that you don't have the control you think you do, and let that inform your decisions. It's not giving up. This is how I look at it. It's not me giving up. It's not me saying that my son's education doesn't matter. It's not me saying my opinion doesn't matter, because it very much does. And it's not me saying, it's just me saying, I can control what I can control, and I can't control what I can't control. And I am just going to have to somehow learn to be okay with that. That is a good takeaway.
That's mine. Lily's takeaway is her son is the next Bono. That is her takeaway.
I think of him more of a Bruce Springsteen type, but fine.
Ooh, nice.
Listen,
he
might be the voice of the next generation. That's all I'm saying.
Or is he a voice of a generation, to quote Girls? Still one of my favorite lines. No matter whatever happened to that show, that line was gold.
It's a good line. All
right. Well, have a lovely day, Lily. I will talk to you soon.
Let's talk soon.
Okay. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Leave a like or a crazy comment. We'd love to hear from you, and see you again soon.